Hello, everybody. Welcome to One Man, One Mic. This is episode 5, and I am your host. I am super excited to join you for the next hour or so as we talk about everything going on in the sports world as of today. So, we have a lot to cover over the last few days since I've last made a video, so let's jump right into this. So, the first thing I want to talk about is the biggest news that broke over this past weekend, which is the blockbuster trade between the Detroit Lions and the Los Angeles Rams, with Jared Goff going to the Detroit Lions along with 2 first-round picks and a third-round pick in exchange for Matthew Stafford. Now, in my last video, I did my quarterback carousel of where I thought the 18 quarterbacks that had uncertain futures, according to Adam Schefter, and where I thought they would all go. And these are 2 that I definitely did not see going to where they did. Jared Goff, I thought, was going to stay in Los Angeles simply because of his contract and the fact that despite his mediocrity since the beginning of his career, I did not think that he was in a position to be traded because the Rams were still winning football games. And Stafford I saw leaving Detroit, but I did not see him moving to the Rams simply because I didn't think the Rams were in a cap position to acquire him. And I honestly didn't think the Rams were in a market for a quarterback because I thought Goff was going to stay. But this is a move that I like for one team and I really don't like for the other. So, first thing, we'll start with the Rams in the situation. So the Rams, they win and lose this trade. They're winning because they're getting Matthew Stafford. And I believe that talent-wise, Matthew Stafford is leagues above where Jared Goff is. I think Stafford has proven himself to be a very elite quarterback as far as arm talent goes. I believe he's proven himself to be a great leader. And I believe that he's proven himself to be very competitive if he has good pieces around him. The problem, in my opinion, the main knock on Matthew Stafford is the fact that he's not a winner. Even when this is a guy that had, at one point, Calvin Johnson. He's had Roy Williams, who was a 2-time Pro Bowler. He's had Golden Tate. He's had Marvin Jones. He's had Kenny Galladay. He's had a lot of talent in Detroit. He has not had a lack of weapons. But yet, he's mustered one 10-win season, I think, his entire career, if I'm not mistaken. And that is something that I don't know how, if you're Sean McVay, or if you're Les Snead, I believe the name of the GM in Los Angeles is. If you're one of those 2 guys, I don't understand how you would look at him and think that with him not having a winning track record, bringing him to the Rams is going to help you. Because yes, you have more weapons in Los Angeles than Detroit did, but as his track record shows, it's not going to matter who he's with. He's not a winner. I mean, hell, if you can't win games with Megatron, I don't know who you're going to find that you think is a better wide receiver that will put you in a better position to win games. So, question marks in that regard. But I do think the Rams ultimately won in the amount of they have the better quarterback now. But it's a matter of what they sacrificed. Now, a lot of people have different opinions on draft capital and just how much to value draft picks because, ultimately every draft pick is a question mark. Every draft pick is an unknown. You don't know if Trevor Lawrence is going to work out. You don't know if Justin Fields is going to work out. You don't know if, Trey Lance is going to work out. But you know that Matthew Stafford is a proven quarterback in one way or another. So I can understand how the Rams would look into that. Or, I understand if one of these teams are in the top 3, like the Jets or the Dolphins, wanted to trade for a veteran rather than taking a chance in the draft. Because that's just some people's mentality. They don't want to build through the draft. And to each his own in that retrospect. Because some teams build in the draft and they found success that way, and other teams build through free agency or build through the trade block and build their teams in that way, and that's been proven as well. The Rams just went to the Super Bowl a couple years ago by doing that. None of those guys they went to the Super Bowl with were really drafted aside from Aaron Donald and Jared Goff. But most of the other guys, like Robert Woods, was picked up through either trade or I know he was with Buffalo. Either he was traded or picked up in free agency. I don't remember. But Robert Woods was picked up. They had Robert Quinn. They had Ndamukong Suh. Like, they had a bunch of players that were not drafted by that organization, and they were able to make it. Marcus Peters is another one they had on that roster. They were able to make a roster based on guys that were not picked up on draft day, and that's a formula that's worked for them. This is a team that now, with this trade, the Rams are going to go 7 straight seasons without a first-round pick unless they happen to trade for one in the next couple of years. And, me, I've always been one of the types that think the philosophy should be to build through the draft, so that blows my mind that you can go that long without a first-round pick. But hey, since 2017, this has been a team that's been successful doing it that way. So, it's definitely an interesting strategy, but I can't knock it because in McVay's time there, they made the playoffs all but one season, and that was last year, and they still went 10-6, I believe, and missed the playoffs. And, if you want to really, chop at that tree, the Eagles won the NFC East last year at 9-7, and the Rams would have technically made it over them in the playoffs if it was, done by seeding or done by record, but that's another conversation for another day. But, so, I think the Stafford and the Rams, they make out good for Stafford, but I don't think what they traded and what they got rid of to get Stafford is equivalent to what they're getting in return. Because this is a team that was winning 10, 11 games with Jared Goff. I don't know how many more games you think you can win with Matthew Stafford. This reminds me a lot of the situation that the Vikings were in a couple years ago. I think I brought this up in another video. But, they had Case Keenum at quarterback. Keenum had a great season. I think he had one of the higher passer ratings in the league. They went 12-4, I think. NFC Championship game against the Eagles. And they got blown to smithereens by Nick Foles and the Eagles. And everybody's whole thing was they got a number one defense. They have, Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs and Kyle Rudolph and all these great weapons on offense. But they're just missing the quarterback. So what did they do the very next offseason? They went and got the number one guy that was a free agent. They went out and got Kirk Cousins. And they haven't made it past the divisional round since. So there's a big part of me that thinks this could be almost an identical situation with the Rams. They're thinking that the only piece they're missing is quarterback. They think that if they swap out Goff and bring in Stafford, Stafford's going to be the guy that takes them breaks them through. And I'm not fully convinced that he can, because this is a guy that's played in, I believe he's played in 2 playoff games in his career and lost both of them. Now, granted, the one year he kind of got robbed with that bad call against Dallas, but then Dallas got instant karma with the Des Caudet play the next week, so it came full circle, but Lions fans aren't going to see it that way. This is a quarterback that hasn't had playoff success. He hasn't been to the playoffs. And, sure, you can say that he had a tough go being in the same division as Aaron Rodgers his whole career. The Vikings went on a couple of runs there. Even the Bears had a couple of years there where they were on a good run. And so Stafford's got the bad hand, I guess, in that division. But it's still, when you're drafted number 1 overall, you're expected to be the piece that takes your team from being bottom to top. And that's something that I don't think Stafford has the capability of doing. First off, this is a guy that at the beginning of his career was riddled with injuries. He was 3 years into his career and there were already people yelling draft bust because he couldn't stay on the field. And to be honest, it's another trend that has recurred throughout his career. He's playing through a lot of these injuries, but it seems like every year you look at his injury report and he's got a thumb injury or a thigh injury or some sort of shoulder injury. He had the back injury, fingers, whatever it might be. He's always on the injury report for something, it seems. And, kudos to him. He's played through a lot of this stuff, but at the same time, it shows, just how durable your quarterback is, or lack thereof. And, do you really want to take a chance on him? So that's another thing that, when I look at this trade and all that the Rams gave up for Stafford, what if you get this guy and he's week 4 of the season, bad hit happens, knock on wood, but bad hit happens and he tears an ACL, or he breaks his collarbone, or he does something along those lines. I mean, what kind of backup plan do you have? And, if it becomes an injury that's serious enough to knock him out for the entire year, are you going to take a chance on him next year? I think he's got 3 years left on his current contract, so the Rams would technically have him until 2024. Yeah. And, but yeah, if something happens and he gets injured and misses most of the year next year, all the year, something along those lines, are you going to take a chance in the following year and say we're going to continue to commit to him, or are you going to try to find somebody else? And if you're going to try to find somebody else, how are you going to accomplish that? Because you just got rid of all those picks in order to get this guy. So the Rams are basically in a situation now where, regardless of the money that they have to pay Stafford, that's beside the point. You have no other option but Stafford now, which is great for Stafford when it comes to contract time, because if he does want to renegotiate and get an extension with the Rams, he has all the leverage because they have no picks to draft anybody else. And they're a team that I believe they're like negative $23 million in cap room right now, according to SpotTrack. So they're not in a great cap space situation either. So it's not like they can go out and make a big money move for another quarterback. Like, they've just committed to Matthew Stafford. I mean, not officially until the season's over, but they just made a commitment to Matthew Stafford, so he's going to hold that leverage. So he's going to be in a situation where he has all the cards on his side of the table, and the Rams are really just going to have to give in to whatever demand he requests. So that's the situation with Los Angeles. And I mean, if I had to, on a scale of 1 to 10, if I had to give the Rams a grade on how they made out on this whole thing, I'm going to give them about a 6. And that's honestly just because they did improve slightly at the quarterback position, but the amount of stuff they gave up, I mean, hell, I might even give this like a 4 or a 5, because the slight improvement they gave up, or the slight improvement they acquired at the quarterback position in comparison to all they gave up is such a substantial, incline, that it's hard to really look at it and say that they won this trade. And that's why some people are saying that the Lions fleeced the Rams on this one, which, I mean, I'm going to transition right now and just saying the fact that I think the Lions did. So, this is a Lions team that, as I just said, this has been Aaron Rodgers' division for the last 15 years. 15 years. And, aside from a couple of years, the Bears happen to take it, or a couple of years the Vikings happen to take it, usually years when Aaron misses a lot of time. And, this is a division that's been ran by one team, and the Lions have been the bottom feeders. The Lions have been a team that, they've been very mediocre the entire existence of the organization for the most part. Some could say that they're the most disappointing franchise in NFL history, because they haven't accomplished anything since 1957, if I'm not mistaken. Was their last championship win? So, before 99.9% of people that ever watched this video were even alive, was the last time that they were a relevant championship contender team. I mean, hell, you had Barry Sanders, who is, in my opinion, the greatest NFL player of all time, because I don't use rings as leverage when it comes to that. This dude was far and away the best player on the football field, no matter who else was on the field with him. But that's another conversation for another day as well. But shout out to Barry. This is a franchise that's been very, very notorious for being mediocre or very below average. And I got some Lions fans that are friends of mine that hopefully are watching this video. And, I give you a lot of props for sticking through with this team for all these years, because it's definitely hard to watch a team that is this badly managed. I think it's more just upper level, the Ford family, and I don't know the GM's name off the top of my head, but the management and the coaching and all of that for this team over the years just seems so questionable. I mean, hell, you fired Jim Caldwell after back-to-back 9-7 seasons. And still to this day, I have to scratch my head about that one, because it doesn't make any sense. And still to this day, I scratch my head that this guy didn't get another head coaching job at some point. But once again, beside the point. But let's get into the Lions side of this trade. So the Lions give up a quarterback that has been the face of the franchise for 12 years. So, yes, that one's a little hard. I mean, it's always hard to let go of any player that you, as a fan, you watch and you rally behind. And even through the tough times, you want to root for this guy. I personally felt that with the Eagles when they let go of Donovan McNabb, because I was a big McNabb fan. I thought the criticism he got wasn't necessarily justified a lot of the times. Sometimes it was. But I felt like, he embodied Philadelphia. And I think that, at least in my lifetime, no quarterback has handled the pressure of Philadelphia and the fan base and all that as well as Donovan did. And, we let go of him after an 11-5 season. I mean, Stafford's getting let go of after, what did they just win, 5 games? 5-11? So we let go of McNabb after 11-5. They let go of him after 5-11, and I'm sure people would tell you that they're more shocked about Stafford being let go of than him. But so the Lions let go of Stafford, and we knew this a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, I think it was, that Stafford was on the market. That he had reached a mutual agreement with the Lions to move on, and so everybody knew it was inevitable. And I think it was just as of maybe a couple days prior to the actual trade announcement that the Rams really started creeping into the media picture as a possible landing spot. And even when they did, it was another situation where, like I said earlier, I never actually considered it to hold water because I didn't think the Rams would actually move on from Goff. But they did, and I think it's the Rams' biggest mistake doing it. Now, yes, both of these guys have knocks against them. Goff I've been a big proponent against Goff since he came out in the NFL. I've always thought that he wasn't anything special. I didn't think he was anything special in college when he was at California. California, is that right? I think it was, yeah, California. But when he was in college, I didn't think Goff did anything special. I didn't think he deserved to be the number 1 pick. And ever since he got to the NFL, he's been the definition of like a game manager. And his first year he was obviously atrocious in Jeff Fisher's offense, and then they went out and got McVay. McVay came in and changed everything, but Goff was still kind of the same. Sure, his interceptions went down, his passer rating went up, but when it came down to the big moments and big games, he still was the same guy. And that's always been my one knock on Jared Goff, is that throughout his entire career, I mean, aside from maybe the Kansas City shootout they had back in 2018, aside from maybe that game, there's never been a game that I can remember that came down to Jared Goff with the football in his hand at the end of the game, and he actually comes out and does what needs to be done. Like, Jared Goff's not the type of quarterback, at least not to this point in his career, that will put his team on his back and lead them into the playoffs, or lead them to a playoff win, or lead them to a win against a playoff caliber team. He's always been carried by better talent around him, whether that's a top 5 defense, whether that's, Todd Gurley running for, 22 total touchdowns or whatever he had in each of those years, or, whether it's a top 5 running game, or whether it's, great weapons around him. But Goff's never had those stats that make your eyes pop, or never, he's never had like that it factor, I would say, almost. And it's a tough thing to have as a franchise quarterback, that if you don't have that factor, you don't have those, like, that wow instinct, or, that thing that catches people's eyes, it makes you very replaceable, I guess, in my opinion. And, I've got people that have argued on the side of Goff with me, such as my brother, and I have people that argued on the side with me that he's just never been anything special. And, I mean, honestly, this 2016 draft class is turning out to be very interesting, because you have Goff now, who's officially, not officially yet, but he's gone from the Rams. You have Prescott, who's in a contract war with the Cowboys, who I think I said it on my last video, but I think he'll continue to remain where he's at in Dallas, and I think they're going to franchise tag him again, because I don't think anything's changed from last year. Why would he sign the same deal last year that they offered him when he denied it last year? Nothing has changed. Like, he came out and threw for, 2,000 yards in 5 games, and then, had a freak accident on the football field, and in my opinion, the leverage hasn't swayed either way. I mean, Dallas can say, yeah, we almost won a division without you, and Dak could say, well, I could have won the division easily if I was in there. So, I mean, they're butting heads and they're at a standstill, and I don't think that's going to go anywhere. But you have Goff, who's gone now, Dak, who's in a tough contract negotiation, and then you have Wentz, who nobody fucking knows what's going to happen with him next year. This is a guy who had 3 good years, and his rookie year was, what you would expect from a rookie, and then last year was just horrible for 99.9% of the time. So you don't know what's going to happen with him. You don't know if he's going to be in Philly next year. I mean, I personally think he will be, just because of the fact that Doug Peterson got fired. I think that was the organization sending a message that they're committed to Wentz. But who knows? I mean, we could be talking a year from now, and he could be on the fucking Bears. Nobody has any idea. But this 2016 draft class, which I honestly thought was going to be a solid draft class, with the quarterbacks coming out of college, is turning out to be maybe one of the more disappointing ones. And probably the most impressive quarterback to this date, as far as just overall body of work, is Dak. And this is a guy that may end up refusing to sign with the Cowboys and end up being the biggest free agent next year. Because if they franchise him again this year, which I think they will, he can do whatever the hell he wants. And that's similar to what I just said about Stafford and the Rams with Dak. I mean, this is a guy that, if I was him, if they offer me a franchise tag, I'm going to sign it as quick as possible. Don't even fight with them this year, because they can only franchise tag you twice. So you go out this year and ball out in Dallas in 2021, and then all of the leverage, 200% of it is on you, is in your court. You can say, I want a $500 million deal just like Patrick Mahomes, and if you don't give it to me, I'm going somewhere else. And they can't do anything about it. They're fucking stuck with you. So that's that situation. But not to get off topic here. But so the Lions, with Jared Goff in this situation, I think they've won this trade more than the Rams did. Because not only did they get Jared Goff, who, despite all his ineptitude, especially when it comes to the playoffs. I mean, this is a guy that has a 91.5 career passer rating in the regular season, and it drops to a 79.8 in the playoffs. So obviously he's got some problems in the big games, and he's never had a 300-yard passing game in the playoffs. His best is 259, which was his first ever playoff game. But so this is a guy that obviously hasn't shown up when the lights have been on in the playoffs. But for all of his ineptitude when it comes to the playoffs, he has proven to be a winner when it comes to the regular season. He can get you there. And that is what the Lions are looking for. With Matthew Stafford, he got him to the playoffs. Like I said, I think twice. I know once for sure, but I think it was twice, 2 playoff runs. And, he's shown that he got you there a couple times, but once you got there, it was, not meant to be. And with Goff, I feel like they'll have more opportunity to get there, which will be better for Goff in the long run, because the more experience you get in the playoffs, the better you're bound to eventually be. So, I mean, right now he's got 5 starts under his belt for the playoffs. And, I don't think the Lions will be a playoff contender next year, but, so let's say 2022 and 2023, they're up in that 9-10 win echelon. If they can make a playoff berth, make that 7th seed, or, I don't think they'll be winning the division anytime soon, but if they can make a 7th seed wild card run or something, I mean, you get Goff another 2 or 3 playoff games under his belt, and he could really start to click and figure it out. And the Lions, as I said, this is a team that doesn't have a lack of options at wide receiver. I mean, I think Kenny Galladay's contract's up this year, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody can correct me. So, I mean, they'll have to work that out and try to, keep their number one option, because Galladay is, in my opinion, one of the best wide receivers in the league when healthy. And that's one player that they do not want to lose, especially with a new quarterback coming into town. But with Goff coming into town, you're getting a winning quarterback, and I think that's the best thing that can happen for the Lions. It's just like, some of these head coaches out there that have records or histories for having, very mediocre, a 500 record. Like, I think Jeff Fisher, the whole meme for years was that he goes 7-9 every year. But when you think about it, there are organizations that would love to go 7-9 every year. So why does he not get more jobs? Like the Jacksonville Jaguars would love to go 7-9 every year. The Browns for a long time would love to go 7-9 every year. But, he went 7-9 for years with the Rams and for a couple years with the Titans, I think, and it became a meme, and then he got fired and never found a job again. And things like that, I think, it's just, you have to look and put it into perspective. If you're accomplishing this and it's not necessarily considered successful where you're at, an entire another organization would be killing to be where you are. And I think that's where the Lions are. The Lions are desperate for success. So no matter what, if Jared Goff goes in there and plays the same exact football he's played for 5 years and plays very mediocre, he's a game manager, doesn't stretch the field, all these things. But if the Lions go 8-8 next year, they're going to look at this and go, hell, we won this trade. Because now we have all these draft picks, and we just had our best season in 5 years. So I would say the expectations for Jared Goff is going to be so low his first year. Because people are already talking about the Lions still drafting a quarterback, not committing to Goff. I mean, this is literally best case scenario for Jared Goff. You go to a new franchise, and literally, if you show up next year and go 6-10 or 7-9, and you put up halfway decent stats, you're gonna have Lions fans looking up at you like you're God. And especially if you can find a way to pull 8 or 9 wins out of your ass and at least be sniffing a playoff berth, then yeah, you're gonna be heralded like you're the next fucking coming of Barry Sanders. And so that is just one of the things that I think really helps the Lions in this trade. And plus, as I said, I'm somebody that believes in draft capital. I'm somebody that believes that building through the draft is very important. And even if you don't believe in that, other teams do. There's other GMs that do, other head coaches that do. So if you hold a lot of power, if you hold a lot of draft picks, even if that's not your philosophy, then great. If you want to build through the trade or build through free agency, I guess not free agency, but if you want to build through, trade block and looking at other players, you have so much to offer. You have, first round picks and second round picks and third round picks or whatever. So you have all this excess draft capital now to offer in order to get yourself somebody else. So, if they don't want to use these first round picks and draft players, they can say, hey, insert team here with cap trouble next year. We'll trade you this, and this for this big player. And that guy could become an instant impact on that offense or on that defense. And you just gave up the picks that you got in order to even get the quarterback you got. So not only if you have Jared Goff, who may or may not be successful in the offense, but he is a proven winner, if you have Jared Goff in that offense, and then you get him another weapon for basically the cost of what you got in exchange or in addition to him, then I think you're making out like bandits. So, you get a winning quarterback, you get a lot of draft capital. What you decide to do with that is up to the organization entirely. And, you really get an optimistic future if I'm a Lions fan. Like, Lions fans today should not be upset about this. Like, you're losing a quarterback that, yes, he might be near and dear to your heart. You might like him. He might have been a good guy. He might have been, he might have been a great person for the city and charities and all that. I don't know all that, but I'm sure he is, And so he might be all that, but you're also getting rid of a guy that in his entire career has had 1 10-win season, I think, or maybe 2. But, 2 playoff berths. And a guy that's made the Pro Bowl 1 time in 12 years. Like, even the year he threw for 5,000 yards, he didn't make the Pro Bowl. So, you're getting rid of a guy that, as much as you might love him, or as much as you might put him on a pedestal, he was very mediocre. Like, overall as a career. So, you're getting rid of him, offloading him. You're taking in Jared Goff, and you're taking in a bunch of draft picks. So, a Lions team that, with Dan Campbell being hired, they're essentially, restarting the jet here. They're all systems go, and they're starting anew and trying to rebuild from the ground up. This is a good way to start. Bring in a young quarterback. I think Jared Goff's 27. So bring in a young quarterback who has experience in the playoffs, who has experience in the Super Bowl, who has experience winning games, and bring in a bunch of draft picks to help build your team either around him or build your defense or I mean, I think the Lions really need defense help, especially in the secondary. But yeah, you have all these pieces now to make your team so much better, and all you had to do was give up a guy that, in my opinion, has been weighing you down for all these years. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, if I were to give the Lions a grade on this trade, I give them an 8. Because, in my opinion, they won every aspect of this trade. They got the better quarterback option for their franchise. They got a better future for their franchise with all the draft picks. And then now they just have a better overall morale for the team. At least you should. And, go from there. I mean, I don't really know what else to say about it, but as far as that goes, as far as the big news for the weekend, Stafford, Goff, advantage Goff. Stafford will probably have the better initial success. Like I said, I don't see the Lions being a 10-win season or a 10-win team next year unless they really come out and surprise people. But long term, I think this could work better for the Lions in the future. So anyway, the next thing I want to touch on, which is news that dropped today, so February 2nd, is the big news that hit the NFL and the media world. EA Sports announces that college football games are coming back. Yay! So, very excited about this, but as a gamer in general, and as a fan of these games in general, there is some skepticism out of me, and I'm about to explain why. So, the first thing that catches my eye about this is when you read into the details, there is still no player likeness. So, if you're not familiar with what that means, it means that the players that are actually on these college teams are still not allowed to be represented either by face, by name, by jersey number. It's all going to be the same kind of random stuff they used to have when you load up NCAA 14. It's going to say quarterback number 6 on Illinois State, and it's going to be a 6-foot-tall white guy. And that's what it is. And I'm sure they're still going to have the option like they used to, where you can go in and create your own rosters and rename everybody and give them the right number and backstory and hometown and all this. But, the main point is, they're after 8 years on hiatus, and they didn't announce when the next game would be, so we don't know if it's going to be the 2022 or 2023. But after at least 8 years of hiatus on this game series, the main issue that plagued the last series is the first thing that you can look at, because the entire reason it got shut down was because players were being represented in these games and we're not getting compensated for it. And that's why EA Sports had to shut it down, and the NCAA shut it down, and the lawsuit happened, and Ed O'Bannon shut everything down. And now, the one mistake you had before is going to be retreaded over as of right now. Now, I know that I think it's 2023 is when name, image, and likeness starts with the NCAA, and players can start getting paid for autographs and jersey sales and things along those lines. So maybe they're waiting until that year to actually release the game, and this is just a teaser that's 3 years out, which would be really kind of mean to everybody to give them this kind of teaser this far in advance. But hypothetically speaking, let's say they are planning on doing this in the 2022 season. So let's say it's already in development, and they're planning on an August release next year, or this year, so August 2021. Where they're at currently, I just don't see how they would do this and not get in the same exact trouble that they used to. Because, one of the main things about the old games is, let's take Marcus Mariota, for example. He was one of the main players. He was the Oregon quarterback at the time of the last NCAA game that came out. And even though when you booted up the game, it would say quarterback number 8, if you went in and changed his name to Marcus Mariota, when you played the game, the commentators, the announcers, would call him Mariota. Now, that right there is kind of a pointing finger right away to say, okay, they know who this is. They're acknowledging who this player is. Because Mariota is not a common last name. Now, if it's a Brown or a Smith or a Green, then obviously there's a whole Rolodex of players you can go through that have those last names. But a unique name like Mariota or like Manziel or like, Hackenberg, something along these lines. If you're looking at unique last names like that, they shouldn't just be in the Rolodex of names that you're going to have as a generic, video game commentating team. So that's one thing you can clearly point at and go, okay, you might, even though you have him listed as quarterback 8, everybody knows who that is, and you obviously know who that is. So because you went in that booth and recorded his last name, knowing that he was in the game. So, that was something that was very glaring. And if they're gonna plan on hypothetically releasing this game this year, it's gonna be the same issue unless they change something prior to then. Unless they've already struck some sort of agreement with the players prior to then. Because you're going to have, let me think of who's going to be a quarterback. So JT Daniels is at Georgia. I don't know if he's going to be the starter next year. But, JT Daniels is at Georgia. And obviously, as of the way it is right now, with him saying no player likeness, he might be quarterback number 5 or whatever number he's going to wear there. But as soon as you change his name, and it becomes Daniels, that might be a name that they say, no problem. Or a really good example would be at Clemson, because they're going to have Uiagalelei as the quarterback next year, presumably. That's not a name that you're going to hear just around town. So if you buy that game, even though he's going to be quarterback number 3, 4, I think it was 4. No, 5. He was 5. Number 5. So even though it says, quarterback number 5, Clemson, if you change his last name, if you can spell it, good luck. But, if you change his last name to what it is in real life, and you play the game, and I'm assuming it's going to be the same commentating team as before. So if you have, Reese Davis and Kirk Herbstreit calling it, or was it Fowler? One of the two. Either way, whoever was calling it with Herbstreit, if your play-by-play guy is referring to him as Uiagalelei, then obviously that's going to be something to go, this is obviously him. This is his likeness. Like, there's no other player in college football history with that last name. So the fact that you took the time in a booth to record that last name to put in this game, he is entitled to some compensation. Like Misi Toloyoma. But, so that, to me, I don't know how they make this game anytime soon with that still being, like, with them coming up today and saying, like, still no player likeness. You're not going to get anywhere. It can be shut down right away, again, because you haven't changed anything. Like, you didn't win the lawsuit. Like, this is still going to be an issue. So I would assume, if I'm EA Sports, I'm waiting at least 2 years. Wait until that 2023 period passes, when players can start getting compensated for their name, image, and likeness, and then just put them all in the game. But that will be something that is even more interesting on how they handle it. Because say you're a superstar quarterback. Say you're a Heisman Trophy finalist. Or a Heisman finalist, preseason Heisman finalist, one of the ones that they have on their radar. And you go out and you ball out through the season, and you're bringing in all this money and all this publicity and all that. Are you going to get paid as much, or get compensated as much for the game as, say, the 5th string tight end at Iowa State? Or are you going to get as much compensation as the guy that is the starting quarterback at New Mexico State? That is going to be something that's interesting, because if they do wait until 2023, when this name, image, and likeness thing comes in through college football, how are you going to handle that? Because are you going to have a cover athlete that is like he used to be, somebody that just went into the draft, and now they can earn all the money they want from doing the cover, or you're going to put people on the cover that are still in college. And if you are putting them on the cover that are still in college, how is the compensation going to be equivalent and fair to the rest of college? Because you don't want one player making, I don't know, throw a number out there, making $5,000 off of his likeness for the game. But then these three players are only making $1,000 off of it. And I have a feeling that that's something like that's probably going to happen. And I feel like that can also start some controversy. So I think they would have to make it to where, whatever is dealt out as far as compensation goes is dealt out equally across every player. And I just find that's going to be so hard to do, because especially if you're going to try to include any FCS teams, it's going to be wild to think about how you're going to do that logistically. Because it's not like Madden, for example, where you have 32 teams of 53-man rosters, and you only have to deal, with fucking 1,596 players. That math might be wrong, but it's right there in that area. But you only have to deal with about roughly 1,600 players, and not including free agency. So you add in another 200 for that. So you might be paying in total, 1,900 players if you include free agency. So you already know before you even release the game, this is the total amount of players we're paying, and we're going to pay them all $10,000. We're going to give them all a 10 grand Madden check or whatever it is. I don't know what it exactly is. But in college, I mean, you have 132 FBS schools, I think, something like that, 132, 133. And, I mean, all those teams have 100 players on them. So right away, you're looking at, absurd amount of players just in the FBS. And I know when NCAA 14 stopped, they were talking about the possibility of including FCS schools. Some prominent ones. I don't know if they were going to do all of them, but having like New Mexico, or not New Mexico State, North Dakota State, and like James Madison and some other ones that have been prominent in recent years. And I know they were discussing that at least before the last game had stopped. And so, how are you going to include those schools as well as your main schools and still try to compensate everybody equally? So I think that's going to be an interesting call on how they handle that. And this is another thing that I think is going to halt this. And I want this game back as much as anybody, because the NCAA games are some of my favorite of all time. I actually just got done playing through a dynasty on NCAA 14 that I was pretty indulged in for about a year. And I got through 11 years in it, controlling 3 different teams. And, I just eventually had to stop myself before I never played another video game, because I already have 6 that are still shrink wrapped on my shelf. So, but, so I want the game back as much as anybody. But I also don't want it back if it's going to be taken away from us right away. I don't want it to come back for a year or two, and then we get the game taken away and shut down again for the same reasons that it did before, because it didn't fix anything. Or for new reasons, because they can't handle the conversation correctly. So I think that's another huge thing that they have to really consider and try to fix prior to the next game being released. I don't care if it's ready to go and ship on shelves tomorrow. You need to make sure you handle all the financial things prior to that actually happening, and make sure you handle all the legal things prior to that actually happening. And one of the other things that I noticed, which I'm not going to go too much into this because it's very minor, but when you look at all the logos and all the media posts about this from EA, there's nothing that says NCAA. It just says college football, which to me is very interesting, because it used to be called NCAA 14, or NCAA 14, or football 14, or NCAA football 12, or whatever. But for this new stuff, it just says college football. So, in my opinion, that's interesting, because Yeah, are they going to somehow try to do this without the NCAA's, I'm not going to say permission, but without the NCAA's, affiliation? Are they going to try to go? I mean, I'm not, I'm not going to even pretend like I know enough to know how they would accomplish that, or like I know how the NCAA and conferences work, whether or not like the Big Ten could say, "You sure you can use us in this game," and whether the NCAA could veto that or not. I'm not sure how that works. And if somebody does know for sure, please explain in the comments or contact me directly because I would love to have more information on it. But I just found it very interesting that there wasn't any NCAA affiliation in any of the media that was posted today. So I feel like that could be interesting moving forward to see if that's just, if they just intentionally left it out, or if, maybe unintentionally left it out in the first, media releases. But going forward, if they're somehow planning on doing this without the NCAA's affiliation, I would be interested to see how they do it and if it's even possible. So, but my last take when it comes to this NCAA announcement today is it's still an EA Sports game. And I know what a lot of people have said, and I agree with it, is that even though it was ran by EA in the past, it always seemed like the NCAA football games were better than the Madden games, and better than the, MLB games or FIFA games or whatever they had coming out. I can't really speak on FIFA because I never really played it. But, everybody said that it was always better than Madden, which I will agree with. It always seemed like it was a much funner game. It always seemed like the atmosphere of playing the game was better. Even to me, it felt like the game physics were better. It felt like the players moved more naturally. It wasn't as, I'm going to say like blocky. The physics felt more natural. The ball physics felt more natural. Things along these lines. And then, of course, the Dynasty mode was such a blast to do compared to franchise mode, and especially in recent years. And so there's so much props that go to the NCAA games in the past. But the thing is, EA Sports, or EA as a whole, is not the same EA that it was 8 years ago when this game was released. When the last one was released, I should say. Because, 2013, when this last game was released, EA was in a really good spot. They were fresh off the coattails of Mass Effect. They fresh off the coattails of Dead Space. The Dead Space series, I should say. They were... I think they do Dragon Age. So I think they were still in the middle of Dragon Age, which was pretty successful. EA was still a company that you could trust in 2013. And it's just been in the recent 7 or 8 years that they have made so many mistakes as a gaming company. I'm not going to go too much into video gaming right now because I'm sure that's what a lot of listeners aren't here for. But, they've made so many mistakes as a company to where they're basically blacklisted by a lot of gamers. A lot of gamers won't touch anything with the EA logo on it, including myself. Because they've ruined so many IPs they've had. They've ruined so many great franchises and great, games that they own as properties. And it's hard to trust them. And so, even though as a gamer, I'll buy Madden every other year. This year I didn't buy it, but it was bought for me. And Madden has went down the drain, and it showed in recent years that EA really doesn't give a shit about Madden, especially when it comes to the franchise mode, which is a problem. And I'm going to do an entire video on how they can fix the franchise mode, so look forward to that one because I have so much to talk about when it comes to that. But they've shown really a lot that they don't care about their properties anymore. They're just in it for the money, and I'm hoping that that's not what they do with this. I'm hoping that whoever handles it, hopefully not EA Tiburon, hopefully it's EA Montreal or somebody else, one of their better subsidiaries that cares more about the games. But, I'm hoping that whoever handles it puts more care into it and actually gives a shit about the product they're putting out and not just the money that's coming in. I'm hoping there's not microtransactions that have to do with unlocking certain things. And, I'm hoping that it's just a lot of heart and soul that goes into this game because there's so many people that have been waiting on it. I've seen for 7 years now people post about how they missed it, and the fact of the matter is these NCAA games still go for a lot. I mean, my copy of NCAA 14, at least before today, could have went for $100. But now that they announced the new one's coming out, it's probably dropped, substantially since then. But who knows? Maybe I'll try to sell high while it's still on the market. but yeah, I mean, so I'm hoping that EA doesn't just destroy it and ruin it for everybody, because it's being looked forward to by so many people. And that's just been one of my bigger concerns, is that them as a company, they just don't seem to give a shit anymore, and it's not a good look overall that they are still the ones heading this company. And I don't know, heading this property. I don't know how long EA still has the rights to NCAA. I don't know when that deal was made before it all got shut down, but I'm hoping that if this next game they release doesn't work out, that they don't have the rights for too much longer. And I think probably the last thing I'm going to talk about today is something I touched on in my last video about the quarterback carousel, and I want to touch on even more now, and that is Deshaun Watson, where he's going to end up. So a lot of people had in mind for Deshaun Watson to go to the Rams, and that was, I mean, I'm not going to say a lot of people, but I had heard that the Rams were interested, which, of course, I mean, everybody's interested in Deshaun Watson now. Even if you have a Pro Bowl player from this past year, you're probably interested in Deshaun Watson. And, then the Rams ended up going and getting Stafford. But the interesting thing was that Stafford was, in a lot of people's opinions, slated to go to San Francisco. Now, if you remember from my last video, I said that Watson was going to go to San Francisco. And if Stafford just got moved for 2 firsts and a third, and then Jared Goff, my trade that I had previously discussed, and I still believe in, for him to go to San Francisco, it just looks even better now. So I'm going to go on record right now and say, once again, that the perfect trade for Deshaun Watson is for him to go to San Francisco in exchange for 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and Jimmy Garoppolo. You put those 3 together, package it, send it for Deshaun Watson. Maybe you can get a compensation pick somewhere in there. If Watson leads you to the playoffs, you get this, or whatever. But I think that is the perfect trade for both sides. With the Niners, you're getting the quarterback. You're getting the guy that you're hoping can lead your team to the promised land. Now, I discussed earlier with the Goff situation in Stafford that, plugging a guy into a great organization doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have success. It was proven with the Vikings and blah, blah, blah. But with Watson, I think everybody understands that Watson's a different player. Watson's a much better player than Stafford, and that's not a knock on Stafford, but Watson has just shown that he's really is a very special talent, and Houston is really fucked up by losing out on him, honestly. And if he goes to the Niners with all the speed they have on offense with Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and Raheem Mostert and George Kittle and all this, I mean, with the type of offense they run under Shanahan and with the speed they have and with him at quarterback, I mean, if he was to be traded to the Niners, which you should do, Houston, get on it. If he was to be traded to the Niners, in my opinion, they're instant Super Bowl favorites. And that's over the Chiefs. That would be over the Bucks if they happen to win on Sunday. Whoever it is, I mean, that's who I'd put my money on. And honestly, I don't know if the odds are out right now to bet for next year, but I would go ahead and put your money on the Niners now, because I think this trade will happen, and I think that it works out for both sides. I mean, so well. Niners, you get your quarterback of the future. You get a guy who's 25 years old and has proven that he is a damn good player and a winner. And you're getting rid of a guy that you don't believe in anymore. And somebody that Shanahan, I don't think, ever really believed in. And, there have been reports that Shanahan wanted Kirk Cousins when he was a free agent, and, Garoppolo ended up winning a lot in his first year that he came into San Francisco, and it was kind of hard to move on from a guy that just won a lot of games. And I think that, I don't think they really ever been in love with Garoppolo. Kind of like I don't think McVay was ever really in love with Goff. And I think if you move on from Garoppolo and you move him to Houston, that works out immensely for Houston as well. Because you're getting a guy that is a proven winner as well. He's 24-8 as a starting quarterback in the NFL. So do the math. He wins 75% of his starts. 75% of your starts in a 16-game season, you're going 12-4. I mean, there's no other way to explain it. In a 17-game season, you're going 12-5 or 13-4. Somewhere in between 75 and decimals and percentages and all that shit. But you go 12 or 13 win season, and so that's a guy that has proven to win. That's what Houston needs as well. So if Houston can get rid of Watson, bring in a bunch of picks, and get a quarterback in Garoppolo, and Garoppolo would be going into his contract year next year. So it's basically a 1-year experiment for Houston, which works out perfectly for them. If Garoppolo comes in and shows signs of magic and leads your team to the playoffs, then you can re-sign him. Or if Garoppolo comes in and lays an egg and you don't believe in him, you've got all the picks in the world to go and get somebody else. And I think that puts Houston in the best possible situation. And I think that, they would be in a situation such as almost similar to what the Lions would be with Goff, to where, the Lions are an experiment with Goff, and if it doesn't work out, they can move on with all their picks and draft capital. And if the Texans made this trade, they're in the same situation with Garoppolo. If Garoppolo comes in and wins games for you, then you can hold on to him. If he doesn't, then move on and use your picks to find somebody else. And, Garoppolo is a guy that, as I said, 75% career winning percentage. He's got a 98.5 career passer rating. I mean, the guy, he's proven to be successful in the NFL, which is hard. And I think in today's NFL, we take that for granted so much that, if a guy isn't playing lights out, if he's not putting up 4,500-yard seasons, then he's just a mediocre quarterback. Or, it's such a bad thing now in people's opinion to be a game manager. Well, look at all the quarterbacks in the past that have been game managers and have Super Bowl rings. I mean, that's the ultimate goal in the NFL, is to win a Super Bowl ring. So if you have a game manager and he's doing enough to win you a Super Bowl, then how are you going to complain? I mean, honestly, how are you going to complain? I mean, Brad Johnson in 2002 with the Bucs. He was a game manager. He just didn't turn the ball over a lot. He handed the ball to Michael Pittman and let the defense take care of everything else. And the Bucs won a Super Bowl. And, for years people said Tom Brady was a game manager. That he just let that defense take care of things and he just didn't turn the ball over. And, honestly, for his first 3 Super Bowls, that was the case for a lot of games. And, obviously, after 2006 or so, when they started losing a lot of those pieces to retirement and trades and free agency, when they started becoming a more offensive-oriented team, Brady really started taking over and shedding the game manager, blanket that was on him. But there's nothing wrong with being a game manager, and sometimes that role will be what gets you Super Bowl rings. That role will be what gets you contract extensions, and I don't think that it's a horrible thing to embrace it. And so if that is what Jimmy Garoppolo is, if he's just a game manager, dude, if you're winning 75% of your games, who fucking cares? I mean, that's another situation. Look at perspective. How many teams would be killing to win 11 or 12 games a year? I mean, everyone. There's not a single team in the NFL right now that would say no to an 11-win season. I mean, even the Chiefs that went 15-1, if you told them next year they were going to go 11-5, they'd still be like, okay, I'm going to make the playoffs. So, it's a situation that this trade, I mean, I don't know what Houston's going to do with Deshaun Watson, but this trade makes the most sense, in my opinion. I don't know how this trade doesn't happen. I mean, I do not know how. I mean, the Texans aren't taking in any kind of contract. Garoppolo's been paid most of his money already by the Texans, or by the Niners, I should say. His cap hit is $2.5 million next year. I mean, come on. This is a no-brainer if you're Houston, in my opinion. Get your picks. Get rid of your guy that doesn't want to be there. Bring in somebody else that knows how to win, and just let the cards fall and just let it happen. And, as I said, worst case scenario, Garoppolo doesn't work out, move on from him. And if he does work out, great. You just won this trade even more because now you can use your picks elsewhere and still have a franchise quarterback out of it. And on the other hand, the Niners are going to be fucking unstoppable. So, but hey, if you're Houston, they're in the other conference. So, and that's even more reason to do this, because you don't want to trade him to Indianapolis. You don't want to trade him to, Denver. You don't want to trade him to a team that's in your conference, because then the very guy you got rid of is standing in your way of being in the Super Bowl. Sure, if you meet him in the Super Bowl, it's a different story. At least you got to the Super Bowl. But worse, if you trade him to the Jets or the Dolphins or somebody like that, and you meet him in the AFC Championship game every year, and he eliminates you every year, then you never made a Super Bowl appearance because of what you did to yourself. So trade him to the other conference, and who cares how good the Niners get? Trade him there, let the NFC have him, and let the NFC deal with him. You bring in another guy, you bring in a bunch of draft capital, and you run the AFC. And, I would love to see anybody disagree with me. I'd love to see anybody tell me that this is a bad trade for either side. It's fucking... I haven't stood by an idea that's formulated in my brain this well in a long time. I'm not a fan of either of these teams, and I just do not see how it doesn't make sense. I really don't. So, but, honestly, guys, that's really about it. I do have some other things I want to talk about, but I don't want to drag this video out. These last couple ones I've done have been about an hour and a half, and I don't want to go in that long. So, I'm going to try to keep it here at about this hour or so mark. But, my next video I'm going to be dropping on probably Friday, either Thursday night or Friday. And it's going to be the big one. It's going to be my Super Bowl video. I'm going to be talking about the Chiefs and the Bucs, breaking down who I think's going to win, who I think has the advantage. We're going to be talking about the futures of both teams depending on who wins, the futures of Mahomes and Brady, and dynasties, and prop bets and everything. I'm going to break the whole game down, and I don't know if it's going to take up the entire video, but it's probably going to be a good portion of it. That video might end up being shorter. It might end up being a half-hour video, but either way, that's going to be a video I'm going to drop here in a couple of days, and it's very much going to be a must-watch in my opinion. I've got a lot more research to do. I've already done a ton, but I've got a lot more research to do, a lot more, I'm not going to say film study, but I am going to go back and look at some game stuff from this year, and I'm going to do my best, and I'll give you my pick at the end of the video. And then, just like everybody else, I'm going to be sitting down on Sunday and waiting to watch this game, which I hope is going to be one of the best ones I've ever seen in my life, because I've seen some really good Super Bowls in my life, and I just really hope it's not a Super Bowl 53, because everybody thought 53 was going to be a great offensive battle, and it ended up being two of the worst offenses that I've ever seen in a Super Bowl. So, but hey, it could end up being that way, you'll see what my opinion is come on Friday or Saturday. I will be giving an update, so, yeah, but I thank everybody for watching this video. Like and subscribe it if you like what you see. Tell your friends. Fucking ring the bell and hit plus and whatever else shit's on YouTube. And I do have a Facebook page now. It's 1M, One Man, One Mic. It's on Facebook. Go ahead and like that and share it. And I'm going to be posting clips from this video on there as well. Twitter I'll be working on here in the next few months. Just once this page starts growing and these YouTube videos start growing, I'll dip into Twitter. I don't want to start getting on there until I know this is going somewhere essentially. But once again, I thank everybody for watching, and if you like what you see, then tell a friend. If you don't like what you see, then tell me. And, be sure to, like I said, be sure to leave a comment. I want to hear what you guys have to say. If you have any answers to any of the things I ask in this video, then please tell me. Or if you just don't agree with anything that I said in this video, then please tell me. I want to hear about it. I want to hear feedback from you guys. Otherwise, I think I'm right all the time, and that's not good for anybody. So, like I said, can't wait to see you guys later this week, and have a good one. I'll see you next time.